It was a great introduction. I'm really excited to speak to a lot of you today. As Lewis mentioned, I came from many other different careers and was lucky enough to make that transition over to UX. And since then, I have spoken to many new juniors or people trying to enter into the field. And I know, there are certain challenges that come with it. So let me just screen share here because I would like to run through a little deck. And everyone can see my screen. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, my name is Janet Bird. Prior to getting married, I was Janet Cito. Miss my last name a little bit sometimes. I had a career in photography at one point. Thought I made a clever name there and calling it Cetograph. So that was my company at one point. But today, after getting married, I am Janet Bird, and I am one of the UX leads at Porter Airlines. Porter Airlines is based out of Toronto, for you guys who don't know. We did actually recently start flying out to Calgary as well as Vancouver. So if you ever get the chance to fly Porter, please do connect with me. I would love to hear your experience, give me the feedback on it. It really is a great experience. So let me dive a little bit into my journey at Porter. I started at Porter 4 years ago. It really was my first job into UX. Prior to that, as mentioned, I have had other careers as well. It's been my home base. I have done some freelance work as well as some mentoring, some teaching, and so on. But Porter has been, my 9 to 5 home on most days. So as you can see, starting on my journey, my first year being my first job there, I was a junior designer. At that time, it was a team of 2. I was one of the only other designers that I hired. The other designer that I was hired was more actually in the research side of things. A year later, I was lucky enough to be offered the role of senior designer. Not quite probably senior at that point, but I was offered it and obviously took it. And then a year later, I was offered the ability to move up in that role as well as a design lead. So we're talking about transferable skills today. And for sure, I think my transferable skills help me to move up so quickly every year. But I know that a lot of you here are probably more focused in terms of getting into the industry. So I will be focusing a bit more on that, but I will definitely take questions on at the end when we do our Q&A. If anybody has questions about, those transferable skills going into your first role and then how to actually move up from there. Okay. So since my last 4 years, I have definitely had the opportunity to go through many hiring rounds. But in that time alone, outside of Porter, I have had the opportunity to meet many people, either through, networking or social media or people reaching out to me for advice and help. And I would say I have probably at least reviewed over 600 resumes, portfolios. 500 of them are juniors. So a lot of juniors, lots of people trying to get into the industry, and then have been in over 75 interviews and design exercises that usually come with a lot of our interview process. So I would say that I would like to say that I know juniors pretty well. I know their challenges. I know what they're looking for. I know, when they're trying to come into the industry, how they feel and a bit of their struggles. But the other thing is, obviously, I was a junior myself at once, and it was a struggle at first. But coming into it, having various industries, worked in various industries, one thing I realized, and I'm sure a lot of you notice about yourselves as well, is that wait, I'm not actually quite a junior. Not in the sense that you're coming out of university or coming out of high school, and you haven't really gained many of those skills or experiences. So here is a bit about myself and my background. I had about 10 years in architecture. That's what I went to university for. I had a background where my father worked as an engineer. He was a mechanical engineer. He very much steered me in that direction as well. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Had a bit of a artistic interest. So I went down the architecture route. Did that for about 10 years, and it was a grueling industry. It was a tough one to work in. If anybody here has worked in such an industry, you would probably know. And then decided to move on there and see if I could find something a little bit more suited in terms of lifestyle, but also expand my creativity a little bit. So ended up doing 2 years in photography. And that was related in architecture in that, I took a lot of photography in terms of interiors, interior photography, commercial photography, very much related, and that's how I got in that field. After about 2 years, I did find that I got a little bit lonely and wanted to join a team again and be part of a company and be part of, a larger organization. My husband works in tech. He currently runs a company here called Finnair Labs. So he brought me into the industry of tech and realized, hey, maybe UX design or, development or something in tech may be something of more interest to you. So that's how I got introduced to it. Ended up taking a front end development bootcamp called Hacker U in Toronto. And then after that came out and decided, okay, how can I, get into this industry with the background that I have? And then things on the side, cheer coach. I was a cheer coach for 5 years, the Navarro kind, not the LA Lakers kind. And definitely learned tons of skills there in terms of mentorship, leadership, and so on. Anybody who has coached anything would possibly know in terms of those people dynamics, in terms of motivating people and how to get people moving ahead. So learned a lot there. And then last, I'm sure there are parents on here. Parenting is probably the one that will take the most skills for sure. When I see somebody as a parent and, being a good parent, I definitely think about those skills when it comes to hiring. Okay. So I think one of the first things when it comes to entering into the industry is that you're a little bit lost. You don't really know how to go about, looking for that job or, applying to companies or what's important, what are they looking for? I have no idea. So I would suggest, and this is something that I did for myself, is taking a step back and looking at those skills that you have learned from your previous journeys. So this is an exercise that I suggest that you do for yourself. So I have done it with my architecture, my photography, my coaching, as well as my parenting. And you'll see here, as you come across and see the different, transferable skills, a lot of them are soft skills. And I think a lot of times people don't think of them as being important skills, but they definitely are. I would put them at the same level as you would put the hard skills, learning software, Figma, whatever it is, Sketch and so on. Yes, those are important. But things like problem solving, people talk about UX and problem solving being as one of the most important things. It is. So, and a lot of times you are doing that in other industries as well. So yes, you definitely want to highlight that and think about, okay, this is something that I've accomplished. I know how to solve really complex problems. I know how to work through them. I know how to talk to people about them. I have a design process that I go through when it comes to those things. And then a lot of things that relate to that after that is critical thinking, communication, collaboration. Those things, run across many different industries, and they are certainly a plus when you are coming into something like UX. And then there are things, obviously, coming in industry that you don't have experience on. And I think this is an important part of the exercise too, is listing out those things that you are not an experienced and are not familiar with. I think most people probably do this well, but what I would suggest is maybe taking that to another level in terms of having a plan for yourself, in terms of how you are going to be learning these things. Whether if you have no idea what these things are, starting that list, getting a high level understanding of what those things are, and then circling back once you have a a base understanding and can quickly talk about them, then you go back and look at those things that you're interested in, and start plugging away at it, whether you're spending a month on each one, a couple months on each one, as you're slowly learning. And I think what's important about this is more that when someone, when you're being interviewed and they're asking you, what are you learning today? What are you doing today? It's not just to know that you're learning. It's definitely to know, you're passionate, you have a process, you have been thinking about it, you are aware of yourself, and you know what needs to be done in order to continually build your skills. So how do you show your skills? We talked a little bit about those transferable skills. You've done your own internal research, thought deep about it, made journals. You know what your skills are that you're transferring over, but how do you actually show it to companies and employers that you are applying to? And I wish I had some great magical answer or secret answer that nobody knows and is telling you, but unfortunately, it is a very obvious answer. And the answer is that you need to show it in the work. While it's obvious, having looked through so many resumes and portfolios and so on, most people do not do this well. I would say a lot of juniors don't do this well. So when you show it in your work, I don't necessarily mean, hey, say I'm a hard worker, or say, I have collaboration skills, or I'm a good collaborator. That's not, I mean, you can do that and people definitely do that, but it doesn't resonate as well as when you're subconsciously showing it to them. So I'll speak a little bit about what I mean by subconsciously showing it to them. But when you are showing it to them, you want to make sure that you are showing it through all your channels that you're sending out there. So your portfolio, your resume, your brand. So you as a brand, your marketing in terms of, your LinkedIn, how you're sending messages out to people, case studies that you're posting online, everything that has to do with you. And then your interactions, your networking, people you're reaching out to that you're having face-to-face interactions with. That's also you showing yourself, right? In terms of your personality, your ways to talk, ways to communicate, and so on. And then what I mean by, you having to show it in your work, what it also means is that you are the product. I think a lot of people miss this. When you are first applying and so on, you're thinking a lot about, okay, I in my portfolio, I need to show, the work that I've done, the school work that I've done, and so on. But it's not, while that stuff is important, I would say that the most important project or the most important product is you. So how you are presenting yourself. So this is just me pulling something off the internet. This isn't a real person, don't worry. This is something that I see often where this person has now sent me their resume and their website, and it looks like this. So if you were to think of yourself in a product perspective, you are the product. And I'm thinking Johnny Doe is the product. This confuses me a little bit. It's hard for me to understand who you are by looking at the two because the brands don't align. I don't know, and this is a little bit of an exaggeration. I think a lot of times resumes might look more, plain text and so on. And then you have the brand that you've given yourself in your portfolio. But at the same time, I need the message of who you are to be consistent across. Because otherwise what happens, like I said, when you think about a product, when things don't match or they are not cohesive, there's sort of a lack of trust. And there's sort of a lack of it seems like there's a lack of you having an understanding of who you are and yourself. Quality over quantity. So I think 5 years ago when I had first applied, and I think at that time, I wouldn't say UX was new, but it was a little bit more niche. Today, there's a lot more people interested in it, and maybe there are not as many jobs as there once was out there. Because of that, I was told at that time that you want to apply as many places as you can, and just, it's a numbers game. You want to get in, and then eventually if you had to apply to 100 jobs, your probability is that you're going to get a job. I don't think it will probably work as well today, because as we know, jobs are more rare. So what I think is really, it's about the quality. So as I had mentioned those things before, it's really about, the quality of the way you're interacting with people, the quality of your portfolio, the quality of your resume, and everything you're sending out there. The companies that you really care about, you really want to put that effort in terms of putting your best work out there. Because when when I get 200 portfolios or a day, and 1 out of every 20 are of high quality, that one really does stand out. And you can certainly be able to stand out even as a junior. So now we're talking a bit back to those transferable skills when it relates to some of these items and how you can show them. Obviously, your portfolio is probably one of your biggest things that you can show these skills in, because you're showing certain projects and so on, right? So you're having problem solving, you're showing your critical thinking, you're showing, your design process and so on. But I think, across the board, what you'll see is things like being detail oriented, and being a hard worker or a smart worker. What does that mean? It means that you are sending me a polished product. You have thought hard and you have gone into the details of everything that you're, sending out there into the world. You're not just, doing things as quickly as possible, and showing me that you're, you're sending me that low quality product of yourself. And then if you are the product, what is the design process that you would go through? So if you are a UX and UI designer, and you are the product, you go through a design process. So in a standard design process, you go through, your research, you define your idea, your prototype, and test. You should do that the same for yourself when you are going through that job hunting process. So in terms of research, what type of research do you do? I think a lot of people have gotten a lot better at this. You're speaking to people who will speak to you, or people in the industry, and learning, how they go about hiring, what are they doing, what are their habits, what are their behaviors. Then you're defining the problem. Is your problem just that you're trying to find a job? Are you trying to find a certain type of job? You want to define that process or that problem so you're able to, work backwards and actually be able to, create the material that you need to create. Ideate, prototype, I think we're more familiar with that. Testing. So test your stuff, test, ideate, iterate. So you're testing yourself, and it doesn't have to be with hiring managers, because I know those people can be really hard to reach. You're testing it with your friends, you're testing it with junior designers that just got in the market who are excited that you reached out to them, and want them to, review your portfolio. Your friends, your families, your mom, well, maybe not your mom, because your mom's really biased, but you want to be able to, get the opinions and see if people find you interesting, find you attractive, if they can understand your projects, if they can understand where you're going with it. So then going back to the research, I'm going to do a little Mr. Porter plug-in here. This is our mascot, Mr. Porter. I did a little persona for him. We're going to pretend that he is a hiring manager. So he is 37 years old. He is a UX lead at Porter. His goal is that he hires designers directly, as opposed to before he has to use a recruiter. He wants to hire juniors because he sees that they have a great potential. And a lot of times they are really eager to get into the industry. When hiring, they are looking over, 20 to 30 resumes a day. He never really answers, LinkedIn messages, but sometimes he does, click on portfolio links if provided it in messengers because it's quick access. And he doesn't need to dig through, those 600 resumes to figure out how to, get to this person. He will speak to referrals, knowing people, throughout the network. It's always good to know that when we talk about culture fit, right? Sometimes it is about that, if you can see yourself working with that person, that is important. And it makes for good teams. He opens messages and portfolios that have a little bit of creativity in them, and put a little bit of effort. Once back in the day when I had to get an internship at a photography studio, I had sent a cake to one of my potential photographers that I wanted to work with, and it worked. There's like little marketing things. I'm not saying send cakes to everyone, but little marketing things sometimes they do catch my attention, and makes me know that you're aware of what product design is, right? And then often I would say that he scans portfolios first. We do a quick scan, see if he sees what he likes, and then he will dig deeper. So I think that's probably similar to how a lot of people use websites. Is your website, scannable? Does it catch my attention? Do I want to read further? And then if I want to read further, does it help me with that? Is everything, very communicative and easy to understand? And then I'll give some last tips before we get into the Q&A. I think, my main message here was that, you are the most important project. A lot of times, I think a lot of people struggle with, oh my gosh, I need to get these school projects looking good, or I need to, make sure I have 3 projects and so on and so forth. If you are not on the first, when I come to your homepage or come to your resume, if that stuff is not looking good, it's going to be really hard for me to be interested in going further in. There is no magical formula. What I mean by that is, yes, I think it is important to have at least 3 projects. But what I mean by no magical formula is, I get a lot of questions sometimes about if things should be long or short, or, should I go with this approach or that approach? It's not really about that. It's about really how you're presenting it, right? And the quality that you're putting out there. And if you're really thinking about, me as a user coming in, how you're going to attract me. Non-related UX projects, I think that might apply to a lot of you here. I personally do like them. I don't mind it. I did, originally put things like my architecture project, especially if you put a little creativity in them and a little thought in terms of how you're presenting it. You've put a design process to it, how you solve complex problems. I think they're very valid projects because I like seeing that, those previous skills of you being a critical thinker, or you collaborating, or the teams that you're working on, and how you communicate that project to someone who may not be in that industry. I find really interesting, especially when they're done well. Playing the long game. And what I mean by this is a lot of times, I get a lot of people definitely reaching out to me when we're in that hiring process. But of course, because of that, it's very hard for me to answer everyone's messages and so on. And because of that, right, you'll see that you don't really get much response, right? So what I mean by playing the long game is reaching out to people not during while they're hiring, but companies that you may be interested in, or you know, people that work in industries that you may want to work for in the future, and making those connections, because those connections will probably pay off in the future. You want to do that stuff now, not while the person is super busy. It's so that they can remember you down the line when hiring comes along. And when I mean playing the long game, it's also about what you're presenting out there. This is a lot of work that you have to do for job hunting. It's like a full-time job in its own. But you're constantly iterating, right? So you're putting your MVP out there that's of high quality, you're testing it, you're getting reviews on it, while you're networking, you are improving on it. So it's a long game and it's a hard game. Finding a job, unfortunately, these days is not, a one a one-shot deal. It can't be done in a couple weeks. You really have to put the effort into it. And then the last point is, as I think I also mentioned priorly, is being cohesive. Like I mentioned, it's really hard. I know there's so many pieces that have to go into what you're doing, but be cohesive in your brand and what you're putting out there. If you're putting an MVP out there of your portfolio, still make sure that everything looks good, of high quality. Maybe you don't have 3 projects in there yet and you only have one. If that's the case, make sure that one project is of very high quality and matches, all the other stuff that you're putting out there. And then that's it. I definitely want to leave time for some Q&A. I'm sure there's lots of you out there that have some good questions for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Janet. And well, I'm just going to start with a couple of questions that pop up in our meetup. And then I will ask everybody that wrote a question in the chat to maybe get ready. I will normally go, I will try to invite you to come over and to share that over the microphone. If not, I will just read it. And the first question goes along imposter syndrome. I guess this is a kind of like a very deep topic, but sometimes really block us from moving on. Do you have any thoughts on how to overcome that, Janet?
Oh yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome, we all have it. I still have it today. And you speak to people who are 10 years in and they have imposter syndrome. You see that, I had put quotes in terms of me becoming a senior designer, and even as a lead designer, these roles were just offered to me. I was not asking for it. And I think a lot of that was imposter syndrome, right? I think some things that you want to think about is, like I said, you go back and do those exercises of really thinking about yourself and what you're good at, and what you need to work on. And then if you are actively working on those things, then you're good. No one's perfect. Nobody knows everything. Sometimes it does annoy me a little bit when I see people say that they're what is it, like a UX unicorn, or I think recently I also saw UX hedgehog, or we're going into a whole bunch of animals now. Because yeah. I think that UX unicorn, it really is a unicorn, that I haven't met one yet. So, nobody knows everything. But I think is having that plan and just being focused, knowing what you know and be confident in that, knowing what you don't know and be confident in that, and that you're working towards it. And that's all we can really do. Like I said, we're lifelong learners, right? And that's really one of the fun things about being in UX. It's constantly changing. No one has all the answers.
Well, your answer was amazing. So you have most answers and quite a lot of us. Okay. Another question that came out is more about where to start. Obviously, it seems like a very long journey, but if you have to point out the first step, where would you, or which direction would you put it?
I think I need a little bit more on that question. So where to start in terms of,
Yeah,
um,
career change from any perspective, any background to UX.
yeah, yeah. So I think if I was to go back, I think I might have deep dived in it a little bit. As you can see, I went and did a development prior to actually going to UX. I actually don't have a UX educational background. That was more just, me learning on my own. If I had to go back and do a little, I think I would have started off on just doing a bit more research, taking some very, small online videos and courses and so on, and see if it's something that you actually are really interested in. And then it's all about research. Our whole life is a little bit of a design process, right? So starting off on the research, you want to go there and think about yourself if you really, want to, if this is something you want to dive into. I also had a question recently from someone on, how I feel about boot camps. I took a boot camp myself, but it obviously was on the development side. I didn't take one in UX, but I know, I have tons of colleagues and so on who took a UX boot camp and wanted to know what I feel about it. There's tons of people who, like have taken virtual courses now, right? There's some extensive ones out there. Um, I don't want to give my exact opinion on if you should or shouldn't, but like I said, I think it's about the research. So go out there, talk to people who have taken boot camps, if they found value in it or not. Ones that have taken just virtual courses, if they felt like they, entered in the market at a good pace. We have hired a lot of people who have no boot camp experience either. They just came out from a virtual program and they're doing really well. So yeah, that's definitely where I would start.
Fantastic, thank you. And my last question from the meetup is, what about the gaps in resume, right? Like people are doing the transition, it takes a while. How do you or see that, or what would you suggest people to do if they try to overcome that?
Sorry, say the first part again.
Gaps in the resume. Let's say
Oh,
somebody
gaps in the
switch
resume.
roles and then it took a while for them to go back into the market, or maybe maternity leaves or injuries and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that actually resonates with myself very well too. As I went on maternity leave, I was on maternity leave when I had taken, or I was just getting off of it and decided I needed that industry change. And then it ended up taking that boot camp. I don't see any fault in terms of taking leave for whatever reason, in terms of your gap. Sometimes you just need that. And I think they're looked at very differently today than they once were. If you have if you've been out of the industry for 2-3 years, I would be a little bit more curious in terms of what you were doing during that time. But if we're talking about a year or so, that's not such a big deal to me. Sometimes, like I said, you're doing a transition and you just need a break. But I would hope that in that time you can sort of still make sure, one, you are the experiences that you've had before, you have documented them and remember them, and you're able to refer back to them. And then the other thing is, hopefully in that time while you're away, you are gaining other types of skills. Like I said, right, I'm on maternity leave. I am learning to deal with a lot of stress and figuring that out, right? So you can definitely speak to what you have done when you call it a gap in certain ways and be able to, make them positives.
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, I guess for anybody that took some time off just to take care of the kids and go on maternity leave, patience must be one of those things that everybody learned in time management. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. Well, I can see two great questions from Montana. I don't know if you would like to jump into the call, Montana, or if I just mention them. So if you're around, you're welcome to get into the call. If not, I can start with the first one. One is when it comes about portfolios, what is the, let's say, most people will have will try to get an idea of the perfect format for that. You know, any thoughts on maybe not a, let's say, bulletproof portfolio, but at least a couple of things that could make them better?
Yeah, I think I had mentioned, the quality and the consistency. So what I mean about quality is that uh, at a very at a very more superficial level is that for sure no spelling mistakes, any of that. You've looked through all the work, everything makes sense. And then on the second level is you've actually looked at it from like a user's perspective, and you or somebody else that you have tested it with understands, right? The communication is so key in UX design. Making sure that people understand what they're supposed to do, if it's intuitive and so on. So when I say, your project, your main project is your portfolio and you as a website, think about that first. Are you easy to understand? Is your message that you're trying to give coming across properly? Are you an attractive candidate? Are you an attractive product, right? That is sort of the first thing that I go into. So, when I say it's not a magic formula, there is no magic formula. You can obviously follow a certain template. We know as UX designers, certain things like things above the fold, right? Those things are the most important, right? Then how do you lead people down and things like that? Like that can all those UX principles can apply to your website and your portfolio.
Excellent. There is an aspect of the question that goes more along the side of the media, like asking, let's say, would you see differently a portfolio if it was in PDF or, let's say, Figma prototype link or a website or Wix, so people hand coded it? What would be the evaluation from the method, not exactly the message?
Yeah, I love that question because we definitely do today get different types of ways that people send us portfolios, whether it's PDF or whether it's Figma or a deck and so on. I personally, this might not be for everybody. I personally don't mind what you choose to give. I know sometimes everyone's tight on time and they just need to get their stuff out there, right? So I don't really mind, but what I would say is, like I said, it's the quality. So if you're sending me a PDF, please send me good quality. But the other thing is make sure that it's usable. So I have had a couple times where people have sent me Figma prototypes of their portfolios, but there's bad UX, like I can't work them. So that's hard, right? Because that already right away tells me, you're giving me something that's not usable, and it's really hard for me to get past that. Even if the work looks great, even if you have the experience. This is not something that only juniors run into. I find people with a couple of years of experience as well. They may have the work there. They may have 5 projects that they've worked on, but when you're sending me a portfolio that is not usable, I'm immediately turned off.
Understood. Obviously, well, that makes a lot of sense. So guys, please check your links, check your photos if everything loads. Portfolios normally have some issues with prototypes, so prototypes normally break apart very easily. All right, well, if we keep the topic moving along and portfolios, Emily had a really good question. So Emily, Alan, if you would like to share your question, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, hi, Janet. Nice to see you again. Thank you for the presentation. It was awesome. My question is around working on more complex products. And we see a lot of portfolio templates out there. And I feel like there's not necessarily a one size fits all for each project. especially when it comes to startups and there maybe not necessarily being a linear process. So I'm really interested in understanding what advice you have for showcasing those types of projects and ensuring that the message gets across in all the stages of the narrative, but it's not overkill.
Hey, Emily. Nice for you to hop on the call. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And actually, as you were, as we're speaking, Emily, I haven't messaged you back yet because I did take a look at your portfolio and you've done some great work for sure. Yeah, complex projects, they're tough to tackle because there's just so much, right? You're not able to cover it all. And you want to make sure that people get across your entire portfolio. And that's tough, right? I mean, I would say on average, I probably spend no more than 10 to 15 minutes if I have to on portfolio during a hiring time. So, how do you pack it all in? I think I had mentioned this a little bit before. What you want to do is, first off, make sure that your portfolio or your project that you're showing is scannable first. So that's the most important thing. Meaning that if I go through it, I'm just doing a quick scan. Does it look impressive to me? Can I get a quick, through your graphics, right? Can I get a quick idea of the things that you've done in it? Whether you're showing me, diagrams, you're showing me infographics. I have an idea. Okay, through this project, you did road mapping, you did, testing, you did whatever it is, right? You did customer journey mapping, right? So that'll be my first look. If I go into a project and it's complex and it's all text, I can't scan that. I have no idea what's going on, right? I really need to dive deep into it to figure it out. So I'd start there. And then I think the second thing is, yes, you do need to edit. So you need to pick out those certain things that are crucial or most important in terms of what you've done in that project, and highlight those. And I know there's kind of a, you wanted to say to everybody, like, I've done so much stuff in this project and, it's so complex and so on. But I think if you were critically thinking about it and editing properly, and really looking through at what you're presenting, you should be able to edit it down so that you are showing things that are the most impactful. Is that helpful, Emily?
Yeah, it is really helpful. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thanks a lot. I love Emily. Well, we have Alex with the hand up. Please, Alex, would you like to share your question?
Yes. So my question is still about portfolio. I am transitioning to service design from customer experience, and I definitely have quite a bit of projects to put in my portfolio. I have put one so far just because of that quality that you touch base on. But I guess hearing all you touch base on today, one of my biggest challenges is that when I work on those projects, I had not my service design thinking hat. I have zero pictures when I did user interviews, for example, and I still want to, I guess, provide that credibility to my portfolio. In this case, I don't know, I'm thinking becoming more creative, but what's your opinion if I maybe add videos into my portfolio, or what other ways can I make it easier for hiring managers to quickly scan and then see like, oh, this is a good project?
Yeah, that's a good question. I myself, very much when I had talked about putting in an architecture project, I didn't think I was going to be putting that into any type of UX portfolio. But I did. So I did have to do a little bit of backwards work. If you are applying for a UX UI role, something like that, right, where UI is involved, there is that sense that you are, building that skill and that talent. And part of that is creating certain graphics and so on, right? So if you don't have those assets today, I would look at it as, a project that you should work on today, and really create assets for it. If it's something that's, even customer service related, what type of graphs and so on, what types of like infographics could you be providing in order to, move that project along in the page as well. So unfortunately, I think, you do need to continue and bring a little bit more work so that you're able to, put that project into your portfolio.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, Louis, are you speaking? I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, the neighbors were noisy. Hello, Jason. Would you like to share your question?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my question was mainly around you mentioned you're having your portfolio site and then also having your resume. And I used to have a very kind of design-oriented layout resume, but the issue that I've had and the issue that I've been told is that oftentimes it does not get properly scanned when you're putting it online through an ATS system. So now my resume is back to its boring black and white kind of format, mainly text-based, so that most the scanner picks up everything. I guess, yeah, what I'm asking is what areas of your branding would you put into a resume so that it is also compliant with an ATS system? So like I'm thinking header probably, or logo or something like that, but maybe you have some insights you could share.
Yeah, I think like you said, there may be certain systems that it will not be handling, but when I talk about resume, you're right. Like I wouldn't over brand it. Like you said, it might just be like a simple logo, font type, using a serif font on your resume, and then using a sans serif in your portfolio. Even that alone subconsciously confuses me. So if you're keeping it simple text, I think that's perfectly fine. If it's clean, and actually a lot of times they're easier to read, right? I have no issues with a simple looking resume, as long as it's all about your spacing is correct. Can I read things properly? There's so much design that goes into it even before you have to design it, right? Just in terms of the way it's laid out, right? So I agree with you. If it's just about simple logo, your font type, your spacing, all that is consistent throughout your portfolio and your resume, I think that's pretty good. And you don't see it often, believe it or not. Not very many people do it well.
Excellent, thank you. And I would suggest there is some online TSA testers. I will just say run it by it. Sometimes even the formatting can destroy some of the wording and text. But yeah, really great advice. Thank you, Janet. Anastasia, would you like to continue or share some different topic or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. Thank you. And thank you, Janet, for this presentation. So I had like very similar question that Emily's asked already about how you balance describing complex case studies in your portfolio. And then like going further, so imagine that you are happy with what you see, like after you scanned all the pictures and maybe some keywords in the case study. Like, what is the most important things that you'll be looking at? For example, you decided to read this case study, and then is it like some set of hard or soft skills? Is it like collaboration cases, or maybe some measurable results of my work? So, or maybe it's something else. Thank you.
No problem. So I'm going to take this from more of a junior approach. So someone who either has maybe 1 or 2 years of experience. So someone with little experience, what that means is they don't have much experience. They may possibly not have done a lot. So because of that case, what I find is most important is their problem solving skills. It's all about the problem solving, right? So that is the thing that I look for when I've done the scan, everything looks good. They understand, I know that they're hard workers. They worked on this, they they've done a good job on this. They understand quality, they understand UX and so on. Now I'm going into the project and looking through the project. So the first thing I usually look for is like, how did they go about solving the problem? And what are the processes they've gone through? And if there was creativity involved or not, meaning the critical thinking part of it, right? Did you go to a boot camp and they told you this is the design process, so let's follow these steps? I run into this a lot with my juniors as well. Sometimes they just want the formula, like, okay, well, you know, we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this, and then we'll get a successful product. It doesn't quite work that way, right? So what I want is somebody who's actually thinking about it, like, okay, should we be doing it like this? Oh, maybe we should be taking a different approach. Oh, this is a hard problem to solve. How are we going to go about solving it? So when I look into the project, I look for those little nuggets. I look for those things of like, okay, how did this person critically think about it? What did they identify as the problems? Do these problems make sense? I want it to be realistic. I think a lot of times people just put things in to put things in for the sake of saying I've done this, but that doesn't show me that you are a critical thinker.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think it will apply not only for juniors, but like any level of designers. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say different, obviously, with an experienced designer is if they have, you know, they have credible projects, then sometimes they're a little bit more lenient in terms of getting them to that interview point where I'm like, okay, someone else has already done the validation for me. They, you know, they've done it for 5 years and so on. They passed that first point of the junior part. I'm like, okay, they have the experience. So I will look at that, you know, a little bit more in terms of, okay, they've done, you know, data analysis, and they've done leadership, and they've done all that. So so I'll kind of overlook that part a little bit more than I would for juniors.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. Well, we're getting close to the hour, but I would just like to open the phone for, well, the microphone for one more question. So, Evan, yeah, if you can, please, could you share your question?
Yeah. Hi, Janet. It was really useful and nice to see you happy and full of energy.
I like your
Even
shirt.
in being your parents. Can you read it, what is written here?
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's like my tool set for design meetings. So my question was, what was the moment, or what was the set of your qualities as a junior designer that help you to be hired by your hiring manager?
Good question. Yeah, I think it's a little bit, you know, there is a little bit of that luck as well. I did, when I talked about that long game, I played that long game. While I did get hired pretty quickly after I had finished my boot camp, during my boot camp, I very much try to, you know, network the best that I could. When you're in a boot camp, if anybody's ever taken a boot camp, right, one thing that's great about that is you get to meet a whole bunch of people that are going to enter the industry, or there's cohorts after you or before you that are going to enter the industry, right? So my luck there was definitely getting myself out there, working on my collaboration, my communication skills, knowing how to speak to people. So I'm personal, like I said. Everybody wants to work with someone who is personal and easy to work with, or has certain design ideas in terms of thinking. For me, doing that networking through Hacker U and learning from different students, I had met a developer who had started there a year prior and who was in an earlier cohort at Hacker U. And luckily introduced me to my director today, and I was able to get in that way. And she had very much vouched for me in that, you know, she seems like somebody who's a great person to be able to work with, right? And I remember when I was first graduating, they kept talking about, especially in development, if everyone has any development background, it's hard. It's hard to be a developer, right? And you're like, how is anybody going to hire me to be a developer? Doesn't make any sense. I know a little bit of HTML, right? So, and then their message there is people want to work with people that they like working with, right? And it's so hard to believe, but it's actually very true, because that's where collaboration and good ideas and everything comes from, right? So I think, yes, your portfolio and all that is important, but networking and getting out there and speaking to people and learning about yourself and how you work with people and so on is just as important.